Hey there, pre-algebra students. Mr. Hoy here, just creating your Friday video, hoping to help you out with square roots. So here we go, students. You should have your math book with you. If you do not have it, please go pause the video and then go get it. All right. Actually, I should have already also said make sure you have a red pen. I will be going over some of the ones that we covered in class on Thursday. So students, just to review, we already went over all these together, and then we also filled in this perfect squares chart. And you need to continue to come back to this and ensure that you have as much of it as memorized as possible. I will probably give you a quiz on it in a week or so, maybe even less. So, but at least for now, make sure as you're going through that you have copied this somewhere else, or that you can come back to the page. So just a refresher, some of these you can easily find the square root of because it is a perfect square. Notice that 169 is a perfect square of 16. 225 is 15. This isn't 16, that's 13. And then you have some that like 900, and that's not on your perfect square chart. But notice you do know that what 9 is. The square root of 9 is 3, so the square root of 900 equals 30. And then as we come down here to this other set, notice that they, some of them, straightforward. What's the square root of 7 squared? Where 7 squared is 49, and the square root of 49 is 7. What is 6 times 6? 6 times 6 is 36. And so the square root of 36 is simply 6. So these ones are very, very simple because the square root of a number squared is that number. So here we go. This is 57. This one is 0.29. Students, think about it like this. If I say pick a number, any number, and I say multiply it by 2 and then divide it by 2. I think you all know that you're going to get back to that original number. Same with square roots. If I say what's the square root of a number squared, it is just that number. And students, again, as I go through these, please do make sure to follow along with your red pen. If there's some of them that you didn't do, just write them in so I can check your work and ensure that you are following along. Now on Friday, we started looking at these ones that are not perfect squares and what do you do? And we went over that one. So let's go over B right now. And you have to look for the two nearest perfect squares. So we have the square root of 51 is between the square root of 49 and between the square root of 64. Well, we know the square root of 49 is 7, the square root of 64 is 8. Therefore, the square root of 51 is between, I'm going to say BW for between 7 and 8. And then if you want from there, you can kind of guess where it will be. Will be closer to 7, it will be closer to 8, depending on is it closer to the square root of 49 or the square root of 64. And notice how 51 is much closer to 49, so we could guess something like 7.2 or 7.3. That's really about as far as you can go without a calculator if it's not a perfect square. There are some other methods, but they are rarely ever taught or used because even the best of them are not very precise. So then notice this one here, square root of 99. Well, I will just tell you this. You know that the square root of 100 is 10. So the square root of 99 is just going to be right under 10. So we could guess that it would be like 9.9. Or at very least, you could say between 9 and 10. Okay. Moving over here, I did assign this page and notice that this says use your calculator. So I'm not even going to go over that. It is good that you know how to use a calculator to do these, and there will be times where you can. Make sure you self-check that. We will go over those on not Monday, but Tuesday when you're back. Students, coming down here, notice that you have to add them together first. You do 9 times 16 is 25. What's the square root of 25? Well, if you know your perfect squares, you know that it is 5. Square root of 11 times 11 will give you 11. That's what we were covering on the previous page. Now you have some math to do here. You have to do 41 minus 9, which is 32, times 2, which gives you the square root of 64, which is a perfect square of 8. And so on, students. Keep going through those. Make sure you self-check. And then we get to the bottom of the page down here. And students, these ones can be tricky because you have to use your calculator to do 5.6 squared first. Then you have to do 2.1 squared. Then you subtract this from that, and then finally you find the square root of whatever that is when you subtract that squared from this squared. Students, I don't have even a calculator with me right now, so I can't do those, but I'm sure we can go over that on Tuesday. So let's move on to the next page. I did not assign this, students, but I would like you to give this a try. It is important that you see this. Okay, so because it says simplify or state that the result is not a real number. Okay, so let's just look at these really quick. Red pen in hand. You did not have to do these independently, but I would like to go over them. 300 plus 600, notice that gives you 900. We've already seen that one. It is 30. But what's this idea of a not real number? That sounds like magical stuff of fairy tales and unicorns. Well, what it means is, let me just review a basic principle. A positive number times a positive number is a positive. And a negative times a negative is a positive. And the only way to get a negative number is to do a positive times a negative, or a negative times a positive, which gives you a negative number. So the truth is, you can never multiply a number by itself and get a negative number. If the number itself is positive, it will give you positive. If the number itself is negative, it will still give you positive when you multiply it by itself. The only way to get a negative is multiplying positive times a negative. And I hope you know that multiplying positive 9 times negative 9 is not the same thing as multiplying a number by itself. So there is no number that I can multiply by itself to get negative 49. And we call that not real, not a real number. Okay? Likewise, 2 minus 3 is negative 1, giving us the square root of negative 1. So that's not a real number. 25 minus 6 squared. 6 squared is 36. That gives us the square root of negative 11. Not a real number. And then I don't have my calculator with me right now, so I can't do those. But I will tell you this will be a real number because this is larger than that. And yet this over here, this will end up being a not real number because 39 squared will be larger than 35 squared. All right, so there we go, students. This video is going long, so let me try to speed things up as we jump into the next lesson. These are fairly straightforward, students. Let's look at these. They're just equations with square roots. And here's the deal. How do you find the answer? You find the square root of x squared and the square root of 25, which gives you x equals, now here's the one tricky part, 5 or negative 5. Because what is negative 5 times negative 5? 25, just as 5 times 5 is. So students, you should be able to do the rest of these. Notice you are allowed to use a calculator. I would ask you to try to do them first. Like you should be able to find that one, and you might be able to figure that one out as well. Okay, so we go to the next page. And notice, still equations with square roots, but it's just a slightly more complicated. Notice we have an equation, and you just have to do the step first. Let's get rid of that 5 first by dividing both sides by 5, which gives us x squared equals 25. You should be able to do it from there. So remember, what are you going to do first here? You're going to subtract 100. Coming to the next page, still just more of that. How are you going to get rid of the negative 8? How will you get rid of 8.2? How will you get rid of plus 4.5 or the 12? You guys know that. So do it and then add the next step that you learned about square roots. Over here, things are a little bit more tricky, but if you have a calculator, it's not bad. The one thing I want to say is do these first. Do 3 squared first, 7 squared first. So before you do anything else, do a squared plus 9 equals 49. And don't forget your line down the middle. And you can solve it from there, students. And you have, a little bit bigger numbers. But if you have a calculator in hand, you can do those first, do the squares, add them together, and then find the square root. And then lastly, we have even more of the same kind of questions. Students, only do these if you have time. I gave you, I believe, some time limits on your Friday sheet. So if you have time to hit this page as well, go for it. Otherwise, we will cover all of that on Tuesday. And I hope you guys have a great weekend.